From Nojo Creative, this is the Brewery Explorers podcast. I'm Noah Jones, a co-host and lead producer for the show. Normally our shows are sit-downs with brewers, brewery owners, or management of a brewery, but today we have a different kind of interview. In our second episode of Season 2 of the Brewery Explorers podcast, we speak with Joanne Love, a beer educator, podcaster, and cicerone in England. This episode was awesome to me for multiple reasons. Joanne tells us about her work as a beer educator. We discuss women and the potential for them to be more confident in beer and their enjoyment. And then, perhaps the coolest part was when Joanne taught us about glassware, appearance of beer, aroma, and taste. So sit back and enjoy a beer in an unfrosted container as you listen to Season 2, Episode 2 of the Brewery Explorers podcast.
1, 2, 3, go!
Hi, Joanne. How are you doing today?
I am great. How are you guys? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you on the show.
Welcome.
It's the Brewery Explorers' first virtual podcast, which we're really excited. Normally we are in the tap room, so it's a lot quieter for all three of us, but we're really excited to have our first international podcast, which is truly exciting. Joanne, you are an impressive person, and we're going to sort of dissect all of those impressive points, I think. But first, before you were a cicerone, talk to us a little bit about how you got into craft beer.
Right. So you may notice from my accent that I'm not from America. I am from the UK. I live in a place in the south of England called Kent. You may have heard of the hops East Kent Goldings. Where I live now, they grow 15 minutes from my house. So the area that I'm in, very hop heavy, very beer heavy. I remember as a child, like my granddad and my uncles drinking beer, like proper like bitters and the very traditional English beers. When I got to the point where I would start drinking alcohol, slightly younger than you guys because of our laws over here, what was available was macro lagers. Like, I could give you some names of the ones over here, but your Heinekens and your Coronas are what was available. Like there's Carlsberg's not too bad.
No.
Like I've done on my YouTube channel, there is a comparison of different macro lagers that I did blind to see what one might actually be feasible, which my husband thinks is the most hilarious thing ever because he had to help me do it. But that was what was available. Some of them are fine. Some of them don't really taste of anything. So I was a spirits drinker. I've got a really interesting work background in that my degree is in costume for the screen and stage, and I worked on cruise ships for 10 years as a wardrobe supervisor. So I travelled quite a bit. And on the cruise line that I worked on, crew were only allowed to drink beer and wine from the crew bar. And on my second contract, we were in there was a bunch of us, and someone was going to go get around, and I was like, "Oh, I'll have a Smirnoff Ice." And they're like, "Nah, I'm going to get you a beer." And I'm like, "Oh, I don't like beer." This was 2008, I want to say. And it was, "I'll get you a beer." I was like, "Oh, I don't like beer." "You'll like this beer." And they plonk in front of me a Sam Adams Boston Lager. And I was like, "Fine, I'll drink it." And I was like, "Oh, this actually has flavour. Like, it wasn't yellow, fizzy, cold and tasteless. Like, it actually had some flavour." And people that I knew at the time, and then the ships were moving around and I got to go to lots of different places. Like, I was like, I'm going to try all the beers and find out where is this flavour coming from. And I just got really interested in all the different beers that are available, because people, like, when you say beer, air quotes, people think of those cheap lagers, but actually there's such a range of flavour and styles available in beers that people don't realise. So I dove into that head first and tried all the beers. When I got back to the UK, the scene was I was kind of into it when the scene was growing. Like, I hadn't heard of craft beer at the time. That wasn't a word that was being bandied about until I got home. And then I fell into all of kind of the names that you may or may not have heard of from the UK scene, like Brewdog were big at the time, Cloudwater, breweries like that. And also some like more traditional stuff. Getting back into that, there's I was drinking bitters and I was drinking brown ales and all of these lovely beers. And started a bit of home brewing, because why wouldn't you? Started making my own beer. And then I started an Instagram because I wanted to share the things that I was trying. Started a women's beer group near me because there wasn't that many women that I saw drinking beer. But I knew that we were there, but you just didn't see them around. So I wanted to get everybody together. But I think we'll circle back to that later in our conversation.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, before I jump the gun on that one. And then the pandemic happened. And I was like, okay, well, that made beer a lot more accessible to people, I think, in the UK. Like, breweries had to be able to post it to you because we couldn't go to the pub anymore. And the supermarkets had a certain amount, but really bottle shops and cans, like there was a big debate at the time that bottles over cans, and bottles were still really quite fundamental to breweries at the time. And since pandemic, I've seen cans in the UK, like almost everyone is just doing cans. And if you see a bottle now, you're like, oh, that's interesting.
Oh, yeah.
But because of that time that we had during our lockdowns over here, I decided for funsies, because at the time I was working for a homelessness charity. As I said, my background is quite interesting. I decided to take the certified beer server exam, which is the first level of Cicerone, for fun. My husband bought it for me for my birthday as a present. Passed that with 97%. I was very annoyed because I got like 2 questions wrong.
Oh,
I'm still super salty that I got those 2 questions wrong. And then we were meeting in, I don't know whether it was the same for you guys, but in the UK, beer lovers started meeting in Facebook groups and on Instagram and chatting more. And through that, I met my beer partner in crime, Tori Pell, and we were having a conversation one evening over a beer Zoom. As women who drink beer, sometimes people don't take you very seriously because it's getting better, but there are some people that still think that beer is a man's drink and you're a woman and you know something about beer. And so we're having that conversation, and my friend Tori enjoys podcasts a lot. So she was like, I listen to beer podcasts, but it's all men. Like, I'd really like to hear some women talking about beer. And then we were talking about other things and we mulled it over, and she's like, do you want to should we start a podcast? Do we want to do a podcast? Like, shall we be those women's voices? And so yeah, we became those women's voices. And I have my own podcast, which is A Woman's Brew. That name came from my Instagram handle. Originally was A Woman's Brew, and we then took that for the podcast. And after my Cicerone exam, I started my beer school, Love Beer Learning, because my last name is Love. So it felt like Love Beer Learning made sense as a name.
It is. Yeah.
And Love Beer Learning came out of, again, like all of this is going to root back quite nicely to conversations we're going to have. But when I passed my beer server exam, I put it on Instagram, as you do, because did it really happen if you haven't put it on social media? And several women that I knew who drink beer messaged me and was like, oh, how did you do that? Like, I don't know if I could do it. It seems so hard. And I was like, seriously, like, you know as much about beer as I do. These are people that are just beer consumers, just like everybody else. If you can taste, everyone can taste beer. Everyone has the ability to say what they think about a beer. And if you can just, work your vocabulary into what they want and have an understanding about brewing and an understanding about ingredients, you can pass this exam just like I can. We have the same levels of knowledge. And I realised that women lack that confidence, whereas I think men are more likely to be like, I'm going to give that a go. Women go, oh, do I actually know enough? And and they lack that confidence. So I started Love Beer Learning with the idea that it was there to support women into realizing that they can be confident about tasting beers as well. So I've done some beer tasting classes over time, because I think Cicerone exam's great, but it is very professional. And if you're someone that just wants to know about how to taste beer, you want something that's a little bit more informal, but you can still learn the basics. The one thing that always came out of it was I want to be able to pick out individual hops in beers. And that's really difficult, guys.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
Is it possible,
Yeah.
though?
That's really difficult.
Is it possible?
And getting
Okay.
towards the end of the story already, I now work in the hop industry. And
okay.
even I still can't pick out individual hop,
Yeah.
like every single individual hop in a beer, because there's so many different processes that.
Have you ever
can
met somebody that
change.
can?
No, I haven't. But you know
Okay.
what?
Probably
Masters
just
is
posing if
probably
they
pretty
do.
good.
Yeah.
So what type of hops do you guys work with over there? Mainly?
All of them. Yeah, we
Okay.
we use all the hops over here, same as you guys.
It's a
Um,
globalized world.
Yeah. You get me into
So,
hops, and we're gonna
you
we're gonna
obviously-
go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's
We talked about just now several different interesting points, and then I wrote down a couple of them, but I didn't get all of them. So I apologize. If there's something that you wanted to
Okay.
bring up again to talk about, that would be great. But I just wanted to talk a little bit because we've talked so much about COVID. So I want to just say this quickly. But COVID sucked. I mean, COVID's still going on.
Yeah.
Both my mother and my girlfriend are both doctors, and they are still concerned at the hospitals with COVID. So like, COVID is obviously not over, but for the most part, for the world, like, we're acting as though it is, and it sucked. But there were several good things about that time, and I think two of them are podcasts, because we're able to have these virtual podcasts now that we didn't have prior to whenever it started in 2019 or 2020. And also, I agree that I thought that the beer world, and we've talked about this with multiple podcasts, the collaboration that we spoke with, Blake and I have a separate but similar project called Thirsty Thursday, which is not the most original name, but we like it anyway. It publishes on Thursdays on YouTube. And we spoke with the Ohio Craft Beer Association, and they were talking about how, craft beer is this bizarre industry where like individual companies work together as opposed to being rivals. And I don't know if it's like that in England, but it sort of sounds like it might be. I just think that's really cool, especially because as a reporter, I was always trying to one up our rival, media outlet. And I typically did, but that's okay.
Congratulations.
But yeah, I mean, I think it is really cool because you were able to start shipping beer, or you had like in Ohio, the governor approved of carry out alcohol drinks, so it's not craft beer only, but like you get a margarita to go in your Mexican food, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, there were so many things that came out of that. Like, I mean, I'm going to be really British and be like, your laws are really weird because we can send. I know you can't you can't send beers across state lines and things, can you? Necessarily.
I think if you pretend that they're bobbleheads, that's the way to do it, because then they're more careful with them
legally.
Not that I've ever done that, but that's what I have. Of course, someone told me.
I've definitely never sent anything and labeled it as olive oil.
No, we're a very, very lawful podcast.
There's definitely not a beer behind me that my friend in Australia sent me.
Is it the one with the cactus?
No, I've got a shipwreck beer back here. So they found a shipwreck off the coast of Australia and managed to harvest yeast from bottles of beer that were in it. And then they brewed a beer with that yeast.
That's so
it was a really good beer too. And she found it. She lives in Australia and she was like, I'm going to send you this beer. And I got this package and it was labeled up as olive oil. And I was like, why have I got olive? Oh, it's that beer from Australia. But I definitely don't condone doing that, by the way.
There's something about you and boats and beer seem to be a common theme for you.
Yeah. But yeah, boats come up a lot in my life, actually. And she's one of my friends from the cruise ships, actually.
Oh, nice.
Like one of my favorite things that came out of COVID for like us in Ohio is the Dora. I don't know if you have doors over there, but where
Well,
we
tell
could
them
finally
what
take
DORA stands for.
door drinking outdoor establishment where you could take a beer in a certain area around like the certain parameters, like Troy.
Okay.
It's like a small little area where you take a beer around or whatever.
Oh, nice.
But before that, you know how if you had beer outside, that's like breaking the law. So
wow.
that was one of the biggest things out of COVID we ever got out of it.
Yeah, it was only like
Yeah.
Las Vegas is where you could do that. So it was
Yeah.
funny, just like when you're first doing,
I've
it's
done
like
that in
I'm
Vegas.
allowed to do this like open container.
Designated outdoor refreshment areas. So it's essentially
Area.
like an open
Yep.
carry law.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think
But,
over here, I mean, breweries were suddenly finding very creative ways of getting beer to people. I mean, I definitely had a few milk cartons in my fridge that had beer in them. Like the plastic ones and cardboard ones people were using.
Any bag-
We had...
I know that Europe does a lot of bagged liquids.
Yeah, I was about to say, I didn't get any of the bag ones, but I definitely saw people with them. And interestingly, even though I said, yeah, I'm from Kent, we grow hops here, beer. We don't have a lot of craft beer especially where I am. I'm near Canterbury. Like if you think of a map of the UK, I'm quite towards France on one of the end corners. And so down our end, even though the area is quite shaped by beer production and the growing of hops, there's not a huge craft beer scene down here. You have to go kind of into London or up to the other kind of cities to find things. So I hadn't had as bigger accessibility to craft beer locally as I did then, because then suddenly all these bottle shops online opened and I could order all these great beers, and breweries started having their own web shops where you could buy things. Like, it really opened up the options for people, which was great. And I got to meet, like, I've met some great people online that I probably wouldn't have done if that hadn't have happened. And now we have this sort of technology where we can, this was coming along. I was an IT administrator at the time, and we were literally about to just teach people how to use Teams. And I was like, oh, this is going to be like a hard sell to some of our teams. Like, they're not going to want to use this. They're going to be like, why am I virtually calling people? Like, I'll just go and see them in the office. And then the pandemic hit, and then everyone was like, right, now and so all of this kind of virtual technology came along leaps and bounds because of that. So we did.
So you're like
some
doing
things
virtual
out of it.
meetings with your like Facebook pages or Facebook groups.
Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
they would do lives, and then we'd have Zoom meetings afterwards. And the women's beer group that I said that we set up, we would have a monthly virtual meetup, and we'd all have beers at home and keep up with everybody. Like, that really kept some people going. I'm really, really proud of that as a way
No, I mean,
for
that should definitely
people to
be
keep going.
something that you're proud of, because I mean, the mental state of people statistically was not awesome. So the fact that people had something to potentially look forward to, I think, is a really, really big deal. So thanks for doing that for the women beer lovers of England. I wanted to talk about the Cicerone thing, because that's obviously a big deal. We have Blake and I have had the fortune of talking to at least one other one. I can't remember if
it was Samuel Adams.
Right. I couldn't remember if the director for the Ohio Craft Beer Association was one or not. But we'll just talk about Sam Adams. Anyway, I know that it's a big deal, and I know that it takes a lot of passion to get into. And I like that you sort of preface it with it being very professional. Can you tell us a little bit about that, as if we know nothing? Because while I've met one, I don't really know a ton.
Yeah. So the Cicerone program, it's got 4 levels, and it's a professional qualification. You learn not just about tasting beer, you learn about beer styles, you learn about beer and food pairing, the intricacies of all the ingredients that go into making a beer, proper storage and handling of beer, like off flavors and dispense methods, anything you can think of for beer is covered by this course at some point. The levels get progressively harder and quite quickly jump up. So the certified beer server is your first level. That is a multiple choice exam online.
My favorite.
It was. And
I'm laughing because I heard recently that Europeans think multiple choice exams are just the dumbest way to learn.
we just think they're a bit easy.
Well, yeah,
That's why they're my favorite.
Americans love them.
Yeah, it's you just A, B, C, D, or a lot of
Right.
times you just hit C.
Right.
You just
Always
go down
C.
C. Yes.
You don't need to know it, but there's still a chance that you know it. You know.
Yeah. So it was. Yeah. So that one's a multiple choice. It's 60 questions in 30 minutes. 30 questions in 60 minutes. 30 questions in 60 minutes, I think. So it's very quick. But I'd been thinking about doing it before the pandemic, but you had to go to a test centre. So as well, one of the things that came out of the pandemic is that then exams went online, so you could just do it
For
online. So that was great. I know that some craft beer bars will have their staff certified beer server trained, because it means that they have a really good understanding of beer tasting, and they will be serving the beers properly. And we talk. You may not have heard of beer clean glassware. Like, a glass can be clean, but it might not be beer clean. So if your glass has been washed with like other things that have had like fats or milk or something like that in, that residue can end up in your glass. And if it's not cleaned properly, you ever seen when you pour a beer and there's like bubbles stuck on the side of your glass?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's not a beer clean glass. And that is taking the carbonation from the beer out of solution. And so it's changing your perception of the beer and your enjoyment of the beer. Like, when you get that really lovely pint and the head laces all the way down the glass, that is a beautiful beer clean glass that has been presented to you exactly the way the brewer wants it, and you're going to be getting the best out of that beer. But if there's these bubbles getting caught in your glass, it's if the head's not staying properly, you might have a dirty glass. Now, when you're drinking at home, it's really difficult to get a beer clean glass, but it does make a difference. So you learn about things like that. And so it's really good for bar staff to have that level of knowledge.
So what's the best way to clean them?
Yeah.
Oh, God. This is a good I knew this was going to come up if I talked about beer clean glassware. It's really difficult. So bars will probably, like really good beer bars, will have like a separate glass washer. And there are particular types of soap that you can use. And there are like methods with, if you're not using a glass washer, then having like 2 sinks so that you can clean it and then rinse it properly. Can't remember what the brand is that you guys have. It's like you want to use a soap that's hasn't got oils in it. Is it Dawn? I think is a good one to use, because it's not got.
Dawn's a soap.
That's what they use every time a company decides to put a lot of oil in the ocean.
In a body of water. Yeah.
So that's why, because that strips all of that quite nicely. So that's a really good one to use at home. You should air dry the glass so that it's cleaned out. And I was going to say, when we get to the tasting, always rinse your glass in cold water before you use it, because it brings the glass temperature down, but it gets rid of any kind of, if you've got dust in the glass, because that can affect head retention as well. Like if there's anything left in the glass when it was cleaned, like you should always rinse your glass.
My method of using a dishwasher probably isn't ideal.
Yeah, so I don't put any of my beer glasses in my dishwasher. Like, I hand wash them separately.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so
That's
beer clean glassware.
sad.
Look it up. It's a whole thing. There's a whole day dedicated to it by Cicerone in April. So there's loads of resources about it. It's great.
Oh wow.
But yeah, so good beer bars may well get their crews to do the certified beer server, so they've got that good grounding.
And I know
your second level, which is what I'm at, and that's question.
I'll go to like drinking establishments, and like they put a spigot and they spray it in, so that's like the cold water.
Yes.
That you were mentioning. Okay, gotcha.
Well, I saw someone who's got one of those at home, and I'm like, I want one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
If I ever get my kitchen remodeled, I'm like, I'm gonna need a glass rinser in my kitchen.
Yeah, for sure.
Those are really cool.
That would be
You look legit.
Right, that's the dream.
All right, so what's the second tier of Cicerone?
Second level. So when you pass second level, which is certified Cicerone, you can now call yourself a Cicerone. If you have only passed certified beer server, you are not allowed to call yourself a Cicerone. So, second level, that is a big jump up. The exam is then a 3-hour written exam, questions and 3 essays.
Cool.
And then you have to do a tasting exam and a demonstration. So the tasting exam is 45 minutes, if I remember, and you'll have to identify some off flavors. You will be given, I think it's 4 different style comparisons. So they'll give you 2 beers, and it's all blind, and they're like, right, of this, one of these is an Irish stout. Which one is it? And you have to identify it from 2 samples, and then you get given samples. This one's like the hardest bit. So you get given the samples, and they're like, right, you're going to pretend that you are at a bar and you've received these beers for service. You are tasting them before you start. Would you is there something wrong with them? They might be absolutely fine. If there's something wrong with them, what is wrong with them? Would you serve these beers? So you could get given, it's different styles as well. So it's, though you'll practice, because you can get dosing kits for off flavors and things, you can test that. And the best way to do an off flavor kit is to try it in Budweiser, because Budweiser doesn't taste of anything. So then you really get what it is. In fact, the place that I work now with hops, when we're doing our R&D, we use a lot of Budweiser, because you can really get the aromas and flavors, because there's not a lot else going on in it. No shade to Budweiser. If people enjoy Budweiser, you drink the beers.
Oh no, it's fine. I'm only the biggest fan of the city of St. Louis, because that's where I was born. But I'll get over it.
I mean, drink what you enjoy, everybody. There's plenty of beers for it.
Yeah, this is a zero shame podcast, but
right,
we do like good beer.
Right, beer with flavor, exactly. I mean, I had to drink Budweiser and Bud Light to learn their styles, because they're very specific styles, the American lager and the American light lager. So they are styles you have to know, as this is right. In
America, it's amazing how the light beer is coming back full force.
Do you know what? We're starting to get it over here. Craft brewers are starting to make them over here. Yeah. On my podcast, we're actually doing a series of we're doing a lager series, because we found that people go, I just want a lager, but lager is a massive umbrella of styles underneath that. So we've been doing a lager series, and we're going to do a light lager one at one point. Tori, my co-host, is actually from Boston, and so she was in the US with her family over Christmas, and so she was like, I'll get us some actual American light lagers and bring them back. So there will be a light lager episode coming to a women's brew at some point when we get a chance to record it.
Yeah, when we talked to Third Eye, and they were talking about when they first started, they had this pineapple milkshake IPA, and they said the reason why they started with that was because going with a light lager, there's nothing to hide from it. The people we've talked to, they all seemed scared of lagers at first, because they were like, there's nothing to hide. That's why you see all these adjunct stuff in until they get their process down.
Oh yeah, that's 100% true.
And also lagers have to be temperature controlled.
Yeah, you have to have really good temperature control. They take a long time as well, because lager yeast, just if you're doing it properly at the lower temperatures, it just takes a lot longer to ferment. If you want that really lovely, crisp and clear beer to come out, you got to give it time to do that. The company that I work for is actually German, so I spend a fair bit of time in Germany. So I drink a lot of lager now. I don't know if you guys have this over there, but it's something that UK beer drinkers really have. You become a craft beer drinker, and you're like, right, I drink craft beer. I don't like lager. I don't like lager. I don't like lager. Oh, wait. I found a craft lager. This craft lager is quite nice. And you come back round, and then you realise that you're just drinking everything, and lagers are definitely in there. Do you have that over there as well?
I am one
Blake's
of them.
lived that life.
Yeah.
That's Blake to a T.
Yeah, you go through. I think it is just a craft beer cycle that people just go through. Like you're going to go, you start off, craft beer, whatever that craft beer is, loads and loads of hops, loads of interesting adjuncts, maybe some dark beers, wild. Oh no, we're back to lager. That's your life cycle of a craft beer drinker.
That's interesting. I wonder how many of our audience listeners feel that same way.
Because, because if you get to that point, you're like, oh, I don't like lagers. Oh, no, I can't. Oh, do I like lagers? I think I like lagers now. Am I ashamed? No, I'm not ashamed of liking lager. I will drink what I want because there's so many different things available to everybody.
Do you have a sour presence over there too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We've got some really good sour breweries over here.
There you go, Noah.
Yeah. Oh, there's some good sours over here. There's a brewery called Pastore who make absolutely proper sours. Like you drink it and you kind of pull that face. Or I don't know. I think they have tried to export over to you guys, but we've got there's a brewery in Scotland called Vault City. Now they make fruited sours and they can be quite sweet, like they're not necessarily as smoothie sour as some of the ones that your guys are making over your side, but they're up there. Yeah. So we've got a variety over here. Got a few people are now getting into we've always had barrel aging as well over here. Few breweries are now getting in on the really interesting barrel aging of stuff, and wild breweries. There's a few with cool ships now as well, making open fermented beers. And I mean, we've got Europe right over the way. So, Belgian beers can be a big influence. German beer is a big influence. We've got all the things.
So what level of Cicerone are you at? Are you
so
at 2?
I'm on the second level, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the advanced is next and then master is the top one now. I think they've awarded some new master Cicerones recently, so we might be edging towards 25 master Cicerones in the world, I think, now. So there's not many. Yeah, there's master Cicerone is really difficult. Every master Cicerone,
they can probably tell what hops are used.
Oh, yeah, they probably can. Yeah, they're pretty good.
Only those few.
Right. just those 25 people.
Yeah.
If you go on the Cicerone YouTube channel, they've got some really great videos on there that they did during the pandemic to help people with their studies. And I watched a really good panel with their master Cicerones, and every single one of them failed the master Cicerone exam at least once, because that's how hard it is. I don't think there's anybody, there may well be now, but I don't think there was anyone at that point that had passed the master Cicerone first time, because it's so hard. Gotcha. Advanced, I thought about advanced, but my friend who took it, she was working for Duvel at the time they're a Belgian brewery. She was working for them, and they gave her the time off to take the exam, and she studied solidly for 6 months to take the advanced.
Oh yeah.
Wow. It's the steps up are big.
Yeah.
I don't think it's worth it for me to take the advanced at the minute, because I don't need it professionally. I mean, even my certified Cicerone I took for funsies. That was another birthday present from my husband. He bought me the exam. And then it turned out the day that I found out that I'd passed my certified Cicerone, I had been working for the hop company that I work for now, for 3 days. So
you're like, look at me. You just hired this.
Literally, we were at a beer festival. So my first day, I was in the office. The next day, they were like, right, we're off to London. We're going to a beer festival. Going to chuck you right in at the deep end.
Perfect. Yeah.
And first day of this festival, I get the email saying that I've passed my certified Cicerone exam, and so we celebrated with a few beers, obviously.
Yeah, that's awesome.
When it comes to the education for this, is there a website? Is there something you have to pay for coursework wise?
Yeah, so Cicerone have some workbooks that you can buy from them, and they do have an online course that you can take, but there are some really good educators that I would recommend people going to. My friend Natalia Watson, Oh, she's not doing hers at the minute. That's who I learned from. She's currently setting up the some British beer sommelier courses over here instead. But Chris, the beer scholar, does really great courses, and he does an advanced Cicerone course as well. He does I think he does all 3 levels. So if you look him up, I think he's the beer scholar on Instagram. Okay. He does some great courses if you are interested in learning that sort of stuff. If you want to do it on your own, I highly recommend that you read Tasting Beer by Randy Mosher. That book is basically what all of the Cicerone knowledge is based on. So that'll give you, and I mean, just if you're interested in beer, just read it. It's an amazing book. It's really great. Read that, and How to Brew by John Palmer is another like key text. You can just get the syllabuses off of the Cicerone website, and it tells you everything that you need to know. But it is just like a syllabus of listing the things that you need to know. So, you know, you kind of need that context around it.
And then the whole thing is just like, okay, you could take the test to see if you do know this, right? Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So can we talk about Love Beer Learning?
Yeah.
Great. So talk to us about why, like what the decision was for you to create the school. Was it just because you wanted to find other fans, or you just had so much knowledge that you wanted to tell the world about? Like what was the decision to start this school?
So I passed my beer server exam, and I was like, that's cool. What am I going to do with that now? Fun. And I don't know whether it's the same over where you guys are, but there was a lot of kind of finding your side hustle type things kind of popped up during the pandemic.
Especially during the pandemic that happened.
Yeah. Yeah. So
it's one of the reasons we're doing this podcast.
Oh yeah. So this is my journey too. So I'd worked on cruise ships. I then was a teacher. I was a high school teacher for a couple of years, and then I started working at a homelessness charity. I started off in administration, and then I became their IT manager. And so I was doing the job with the charity during the pandemic. I was very lucky in that I managed to work all the way through. Like, we were very happy that, because we thought maybe our funding would run out because we weren't able to provide the services and stuff, but we were able to continue to support people throughout the pandemic, which was amazing. But it was great, but my passion was in beer. So I was like, right, I want to do something else. So I found this side hustle course. Was going through the first day where it's like, dream big. What are the things that you are good at? Make a list. So, I was writing, I'm really good at sewing. I like drawing. I like reading. I like beer. I've kind of had this the little light bulb moment where I was like, well, I really like beer, and I'm a qualified teacher. Like, why don't I try and support these? Like, after having all of those messages from women who were like, oh, I don't know if I could do this, when I knew for well that they could, I was like, why don't I start an online school that helps people to build their confidence in beer tasting? Because you do, you go places and, yes, I'm a certified Cicerone. I don't really tell people because, you can say, they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm a certified Cicerone. But you guys know what the beer tastes like in your glass. You know whether you like it, you know whether it's any good. And that's what's important to you. Like, if you can taste it, it's there. And if you like it, then that's what matters. Like, I'm not any better at tasting beer than you are. I just have the right words to say what is coming into mind. And I wanted to build that, right? Because I wanted to build that confidence in people. And I, as a woman, and especially because we have very traditional beer down here in Kent. I'd been to a lot of beer festivals, but they're very traditional festivals. And I would walk in and be the only woman, or people would be looking at me and they're like, oh, you want a cider? No, I don't want a cider. I want that Imperial Stout. Thank you very much. No, don't give me the gin menu. I want beer. That's what I'm here for. Like, I have judged the Kent Beer Festival beer of the festival every time I've gone to the festival because they go, oh, you're a woman drinking beer. Do you want to come and do this judging for us?
Oh, it's like random?
Yeah. So they'll just grab people and be like, we're doing it. And they'll be like, come in, oh, you're a woman. We need a woman to do that because we've not got any women. And I'm like, I can literally see like 5 other women around it. Oh, they're drinking cider though. Are they? So yeah, I've done it in our area. Like I've been pulled up because I'm a woman. I've also had people tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about with beer. And was one of the reasons that I ended up taking the exams in the first place. So I can be like, actually, yes, I do. And I've got 2 certificates that prove that I do as well.
You've got to get one of those Doctor Who. I mean, his badge is invisible.
Right? Yeah, they're just.
But you've got to just have a badge on you.
Yeah.
To be like.
I mean,
I do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't tell people I'm a cicerone, but when I'm going to places for work, I do wear. Yeah, you get a pin badge for each different levels. I do wear my pin badge when I go to certain things.
People who need to know.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I have been stopped. I did get stopped at a beer festival last year, and a guy was like, "Oh, you're a cicerone. Will you tell me what you think about my beer?" And I was like, "I mean, I will, but don't be upset when I tell you what I actually think."
Oh no.
I'm gonna tell you what I actually think. And it was fine. It was a yuzu wheat beer, and it was lovely. And I was like, "It's a little bit thin though, and it needs more yuzu." And he was like, "Oh, but this and that and the other." I'm like, "That's cool." But you asked me what I thought.
You asked, I answered.
Yeah. You want the honest opinion.
Yeah, so but yeah, like as women, people don't believe that we know what we're talking about. So I wanted to support those people, and not just women. I've taught all different types of people. I've done it in person, I've done it online, I've done it at festivals. So I started that, just help people be more confident in their beer hobby, and to just understand what they're tasting in their glass. And that's what's really fun about drinking beer, is finding that interesting thing that's in your glass that someone has made and you're now getting to try.
Yeah. Well, not to sound like a late night show, but would you want to teach us a little bit of something about beer? I know that we all have beers in front of us. Blake is the biggest beer fan of our group, and he actually has a beautiful looking flight for.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, so we're hoping you can talk to us a little bit about glassware appearance and aroma and taste.
Yeah.
And by the way, Noah and I are using the same glass.
That's true. Which we're repping the glass that we actually got at our last podcast with Whiskey Rebellion for our season 2 debut.
Nice. Mm-hmm. So glassware. The first thing you should do if you're tasting a beer is you've got to put it in a glass. Like if you're just hanging out with your mates, or you're at a barbecue, feel free to drink it out of the bottle, drink it out of the can. But if you want to taste your beer, you got to put it in a glass. Yes. It's going to open it up more for you. You're going to be able to see it because we taste with our eyes as well. Like all of our senses are involved in this. So you've got to use a glass. If you're just starting out, any glass will do. I am that person that will be somewhere and go, "Can I have a wine glass?" And I'll put my beer in it.
Why a wine glass?
Oh, so a wine glass is great because it's got that lovely rounded shape, and that helps to open up the flavours and the aromas. And they're usually shaped so that they capture the aromas as well and funnel them up to your nose. So what we think of as flavour is actually aroma and taste combined, which I'll talk about when we get there. But so you need that aroma. There's also a big debate going on in the UK at the minute. Oh, driving me mad. There's a whole thing about the amount of head on your beer. I don't think
that's also something
in the US.
I've seen in the US as well. Yeah.
Oh, you have got it as well? So there's this thing where people are like, "Oh, I want to top up," because if they think they've got too much head, they're not getting enough beer for their money.
Right.
That head is there on purpose. Like it is there to capture those aromas, and that builds that flavour for you. Like, I get very upset when people are like, "Oh, it's too much head." Like, no, that's part of your beer. Like it's there. It's supposed to be there. It's helping you to be able to taste what the brewer wanted you to taste. So any glass will do. I know in America, I haven't got one here. So one of the glasses that you guys use a lot is the shaker pint, which is straight-sided.
Yep.
I'm not a fan of shaker pints. If it's what you've got, use it. But I prefer a glass that's got a bit of a shape to it, again, because it'll open up your aromas and flavours. I personally, like, if you're going to get yourself a beer glass, get yourself a Teku. They're a lovely kind of bold shape. They've got a stem. Not only does that make you feel proper fancy, because you're drinking out of stem glass,
Which I'm all about.
right?
Yes.
You want to be fancy while you're drinking your beer,
That's no-
especially if you've
yeah,
got like
that's
something
no
really
tea.
nice and wild. Like you want that in a proper fancy glass. But stems are great. I love stemmed glassware because the heat of your hand is not on the beer; it's on the stem.
Oh yeah.
So if you've got a beer, like you're having a really lovely hazy IPA or something like that, you don't want to be warming it up too quickly. You want that to be cooler. So I love a stem because you can do that. I mean, you can use a tumbler as well. These little Allegra glasses, similar to the shape that you guys have got. Like they're stemless. Breweries love this sort of shape at the minute. I think it's because they stack really well. Yeah, I think it's easier to wash. Like they don't break. Like so they're quite. It's fine. It's not my favourite, but they're a curved shape, so they're going to open up those aromas. Where it curves in at the top, that's capturing the aroma as well, which is great.
Okay.
If you are a stouts, dark beers, imperial stouts fan, you must get yourself a snifter. That is one of those like brandy glasses, like the really curved ones. That you can get your beer in it. You can give it a good swirl round. That's going to open up all of those amazing aromas and flavours. So have a look at what your favourite beer style is. Invest in a glass that goes with that because there's different ones that go with all the different styles. Don't look at Belgian beers because they've all got their own proprietary one. Like there are bars in Belgium that won't serve you a beer if they've run out of the glass that goes with it because they're so specific about having the right glassware. Like the Belgians are a class of their own over there.
Yeah, maybe they're born with the Cicerone certificate.
No, because if you start talking to them about beer styles, they're like, "What's a beer style? I'm just going to brew a beer that I like." Like they are a completely different class of their own over in Belgium, but they can be because they make amazing beer. So what are you going to do? Get a glass, any glass. My particular favourite at the minute is actually a little tasting glass that I got from a beer festival over here. Stemmed, it's curved, it's a nice kind of shape. Make sure you've got a glass. And as I said before, rinsing it in cold water first, it's going to bring the temperature of the glass down. It's going to help with the surface tension on the glass as well with the beer, making sure it pours nicely. And it's going to clean out if you've got any dust or anything left in there. I know over in the US you have like lots of places do like frozen mugs. Ooh. Yeah. If I see that,
I have all of my beer mugs, or not mugs, but my glasses in the freezer. Is that a no-no?
Do you? Yeah, that's a big no-no.
No.
I feel like it makes it colder.
Well, yeah, so that's the problem. So you want your beer cold, but you don't want it so cold that you can't taste it. So that temperature, it works on your tongue and it works on the beer and it stops the what you want being like the volatile compounds from being released. So you're not going to taste what the brewer is expecting you to taste. You're not going to smell what they're expecting you to smell because it's still locked in the beer, and it's dulling your senses in your mouth. So frozen mugs are terrible. If it's in a beer bar as well, when they clean it and then put it in the freezer, like sanitation chemicals could be caught in there. Like anything could be frozen in with that, so you don't want that. That's a big no-no.
It's like,
I mean, again, do what you want to do, everybody. It's up to you. But these are my.
I'm taking mine out as soon as I stop recording.
like we got an American bar chain that commercializes their beer at 26 degrees. That like the mugs are ice cold, and I remember I had an IPA one time. I said, "This tastes awful." I mean, it was a truth, and truth is like one of Cincinnati's prime beers, and it was just so bad. It's like I've never had a truth that bad.
Yeah. And I mean that's why Budweiser light lagers are served so cold because they don't taste better then. So they can be really cold.
Because I had one of the macro beers that cold, and I was like, "Oh, this tastes better."
Yeah, because then it's just really cold and refreshing.
Well, maybe that's why they
There's a
say
reason they do that.
Bush should be ice cold, and then Mount
100%.
Yes.
100%.
That's so interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we're talking to you.
Yeah. So, and then with a darker beer, you want that to be slightly warmer than a paler beer, because there's just more complex flavors in it generally from all the different malts that are used in it. So yeah, temperature is another whole thing. Like there's some topics we're having here which we could have that entire podcast episodes on.
Doesn't Ireland isn't it the proper way is to serve Guinness at close to room temp?
Yeah. So you guys have heard that we drink warm beer in the UK, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
I was flying. So came over to Portland and Yakima for the hop harvest back in September. As I'm flying home, I'm sat next to American guy. Hears that I'm English, and he's like, "Yeah, so you guys drink warm beer, right?" And I'm like, right.
It's the first thing he says.
Literally the first thing he said to me, "You guys drink warm beer, right?" And I was like, "Okay, right, let's get into this topic." So,
Put your dukes up.
when we say warm beer, what you're referring to is our cask beer. So that is, it's not actually warm. It's kept at cellar temperature, which is between 8 and 10 degrees. It should be about 10 degrees Celsius. So yes, your craft beers in your craft beer bars are probably being served at 3 degrees Celsius, because that's the kind of beers that they are. Cask beer is fermented in the cask, in the barrel. So the yeast needs that temperature to be able to work, and it's actually not warm. 10 degrees isn't actually warm. It's just warmer than your 3 degree craft beer. So people think it's warm and it's not. And I've had American friends over and given them cask beer, and they're like, "Well, this isn't warm at all. Where does that come from?" And I was like, "It's because it's cellar temperature. It's different." Because the yeast is in the beer and it is still actively working away and doing what it has to do. Cask beer is a whole art of itself. There are places in the US that do cask beer, and it's a whole different art form, completely different. You have the beer has to get to the pub, and then they have to rack it, and it has to be it's called stillage. It has to be sat and left, and then the brewer, the pub owner is testing to see whether it's at the right carbonation level to be served, and then it's drawn through a pump by gravity, or rather than the carbonation is not added. That carbonation comes from the yeast. So it's very interesting type of beer. If you get to try some, do, because
just so our audience can hear it. There's a cask ale tap room in Lexington, Ohio, which is close to where I used to live in Mansfield, called Laxton Hollow. And they are at one point, at least they were one of 12 cask breweries. So I feel like the state of Ohio is lucky to have one. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
There's a few. It tends to be our more traditional styles, like best bitter, oatmeal stout, things like that tend to be on cask. But you do get English IPA. But there are a few craft breweries who are doing cask as well, and Track Brewing in Manchester, their IPA Sonoma is very well known, and they do that in keg and on cask, and it is beautiful on cask. Cask just gives it's got a smoother mouth feel about it because it is less carbonated, but you get those complexities of flavor from it because there's not other things taking away from it. It's an interesting experience.
So when you talk about British IPAs, are they similar to our version of West Coast IPAs?
No.
Okay. Because I know West Coast are bitter, but
yeah. So an English IPA is probably, of the other IPA styles, it is probably closest to a West Coast, but it's more earthy, it's more malty. You do get a bit of kind of a marmalade-y citrus note to it, but there's not going to be any kind of pine or resin or anything like that.
Okay, gotcha.
Because originally they would have been made with UK hops, and UK hops tend to be more woodsy, more earthy. things like that. Not the punchy flavors that you get from American hops.
Okay,
or
because
Australian hops.
sometimes some breweries around here do like a brute IPA, but that's as close as to bitter as we get.
Yeah,
And
so brute IPAs with champagne yeast to make it really, really dry.
Okay.
They came over here for a little bit and died a massive death. I really enjoy a brute IPA, but it divides the room when you talk about it in the UK beer scene.
I feel the same way on black IPAs and American.
Love a black IPA.
Yes, they're so good.
Yeah.
That I have a local one called Yellowmatic in Huber Heights, and they make an amazing black IPA. I so much enjoy them.
Yeah.
It seems like black lagers have become popular too.
Oh, black
around
lagers
us.
are good too. Yeah, I love a black lager. I am it's really interesting that I work for a hop company now because actually I prefer like dark beers and fruited sours and things like that. When I went for my interview, they were like, "What's your favourite beer style?" I like a milk stout. I like a saison, and they were like, "Oh, well, they don't use many hops." So I'm like, "You didn't ask me what my favourite hop was." I still managed to get the job, so we're
Yeah, look at you, rock star.
Because another, we've been talking about festivals. Like, how many festivals does London have? Because like in Cincinnati, we have the Bachfest, then we also have Oktoberfest. But outside of that, it's up to the breweries. I feel like throwing their own like anniversary parties or beer releases.
No, we have quite a lot. So there'll be craft beer festivals, and then there'll be so cask beer is often referred to as real ale because it's got the live ingredient in it. So there'll be real ale festivals, and there'll be craft beer festivals. They can overlap as well, but there's some differentiation between them. We've got there are quite a few. Like there's the London Craft Beer Festival that happens in the summer. The Great British Beer Festival. Now that's a real ale festival that they are starting to take keg now. That has actually been postponed this year because their venue isn't going to be ready for them because it's having some refurbishment done, and they couldn't get a replacement venue. But as well, like my country is so much smaller than yours, so.
You have such a more amount of tradition and history with making beer that I think also, gives you more credibility in this type of conversation. Not necessarily individually like talking to us. You obviously have that, but it's not because of tradition. But I think festival-wise, there may be more history or reasoning for that.
And I wonder, like, did Prohibition in America, which was a travesty, what they did it destroy some like traditions, like festivals? And it's like in where Eric and I are in Troy, that they were so against this DORA thing because they wanted in the bars, they wanted out. I wonder if America is still like some of are scared to have all these festivals because they're gonna think they're all drunks and
maybe.
And it's like America's even though I'm from America, they're very weird in their beer stuff. It's like,
I think unfortunately it's a lot of conservatism and worry about people taking advantage of stuff.
Yeah.
And as a wild liberal myself, I feel like that's silly.
Well, so when I was at university, I did a semester at the University of Florida. And I came over and we were doing a history.
World.
Oh, it was great. That was pre beer drinking days. So, I'm in I did costume for the screen and stage as my degree. So I was in the costume school, and we were doing a history of costume class. And the lecturer looked at me and he was like, "You have to remember that America is built on the Puritans who came over from you. They left you because they thought you were too debauched." And I was like, "Oh yeah,
That's
yeah,
true.
that makes sense."
Yeah.
This sounds like I need a trip to Britain sometime. I think I'd probably fall in love with it.
You definitely do.
Well, I went on a family vacation to Spain a year ago, and we were at a park, and people were just openly drinking, and I thought that was so. I mean,
amazing.
Of course, interesting and cool, but I was very alerted to it because you could never do that in like New York Central Park.
Right. Yeah, no, you can totally do that over here. Conversely, the first time I came to America, someone went to Walmart on a Sunday night, and I was like, "There are shops open on a Sunday night."
Yeah,
We have,
capitalism
we have,
is strong in this country.
Well, but we have because it's Sunday, your shops can only be open till like 4 p.m.
Sure.
So I was.
We used to have 24 hours Walmarts in America.
Yeah, I mean we have 24-hour air quote supermarkets, but they still close on Sunday at 4 o'clock.
In an effort to rein this back in and also allow me to drink something other than my saliva, can we talk about aroma and taste?
Yes, right. So just for you guys, I've got an American beer with me today.
Oh,
I'm drinking Velvet Underbrown by Heavy Riff Brewing. So actually, the beer festival that I mentioned, the London Craft Beer Festival, that's done by a company, and they do different beer festivals around the country. But the London version has a Brewers Association bar, so the American Brewers Association bar. And I picked this up at the Brewers Association bar this summer. So I thought it'd be appropriate. It is an American brown ale, so we're getting an American beer style in as well.
Blake and I have actually been to this brewery.
Yeah.
Oh, you have?
They're out in St. Louis, Missouri.
Yep.
Ah, I had their wheat beer.
Home of Budweiser. And no
The
joke.
king of beers.
Amazing. There we go. Right, so you have your beer. The first thing I do once I've poured my beer is I'm going to take in the appearance. So, you can have a look at it. What kind of colour is it? What's the head like? This is a brown ale, so I'm not, what's your clarity like? How clear is it? Like if you've got a lovely lager, you want to be able to see right through that bad boy. If it's a hazy, that could look like soup, but that's fine if that's what it's supposed to look like. I mean, if you get a lager that's hazy, like an IPA, then that might be a problem. But
so when you say
looks
clarity, just for the record, you don't mean like its translucentness so much at like for a dark beer like this. Like it's not clear, right?
No.
Or is that what?
No, so your clarity on this one's going to be difficult to judge that. But if you hold it up to the light, this one's really dark, so you're not going to see. But sometimes you can see like a highlight. It might have like a bit of a gold highlight or a red highlight. Like this is this one on the back of it told me it's got lactose in it, so that's why I can't see through mine. But a brown ale, sometimes you can see through it, and it is a beautiful like chestnut red color. Like you can get some really lovely colors going on. You might also be able to see what the carbonation's like, because that's going to inform what you think about the beer as well. Like if it's got lots of carbonation bubbles or if it's not got very many. You do have to be careful when you're looking at a beer though. Talking about black IPAs. When you see a beer that's brown, you're going to think about flavours like chocolate and coffee. That's what your brain's going to automatically go to, because your brain goes to like the simplest thing that it can think of straight away. You're going to get a black IPA, and then you're going to get those resins, and you might get the pine, and you might get the lovely fruitiness from it, and that's going to really mess you up. So you have got to be open-minded when you're looking and when you're drinking, because what you see might be slightly different from what you then taste. But you can take in what it looks like. That's going to, does it really look appetizing? Does it make you want to drink it? I mean, mine does. So once you've looked at it, we're then going to take in the aroma. When you crack your can or your bottle, you might get aroma right away, because aroma particles are very volatile. So there are things that will come out as soon as you open the can that they might then be gone. There's a thing with German lagers that sometimes you get a little bit of sulfur when you first open them.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
When you first open it. If it still smells like sulfur when you're at a point where you're drinking through it, that's then a problem. But there are things that just come through that are like very volatile, one burst, and then they're completely gone.
Yeah, I've had that happen where I set it to the side because I'm just like, I can't drink that now.
yeah.
Is it because there's sulfur in the water? Is that what the
sometimes? Yeah, and you can get like sulfur compounds are sometimes a byproduct of fermentation as well. Like you get certain bits are like there are lots of aromas and flavors that can happen during fermentation, but the yeast is very clever and it will clean it up. So you might get, so there's one particularly in cask beer, diacetyl, which is like a buttered popcorn type smell. In cask beer, at low levels, that's completely acceptable. If you get a lager and it smells like buttered popcorn, they have not let that ferment long enough. So it is diacetyl is just created by yeast. But as yeast does its job, it then cleans it up behind itself. So if you've got a diacetyl, that buttery popcorn smell in a lager, it's not been left to ferment long enough. They haven't done a good job on that lager. That will come about in our cask beers because, as I said, there's yeast in there. The yeast is still working away. So in a low level, the yeast has been doing its thing. It's not been in there long enough because it's a live product, it's not been pasteurized or put in a can or something like that. A little bit of air is in there. So you've got to serve it quickly. So there will be a little bit of diacetyl still because the yeast just hasn't got the time to clean it up. But in those kinds of styles, it's acceptable. Another one that's from brewing processes is DMS, which is like a creamed corn smell. That'll be a brew house problem. So there's lots of different things that can happen, but techniques for assessing your aroma. Obviously, stick your nose in it. You're going to get some lovely ones, but there's some. There can be lots of levels to the aroma of beer. Sometimes you need to do different things to get all those different levels. So one of my favourites is the drive-by technique, where you take your glass and you pass it underneath your nose, backwards and forwards, while you breathe in. And you're going to pick up the top notes of the aroma.
Okay.
Mine's got a nice bit of coffee in mine. Lovely. You're then... Well, one of my favourites, if I can't get a lot of aroma from it, is the pull away. So you'll smell it and then you pull the glass away from your nose. And you look kind of weird when you're doing it because you're like...
Yeah, I was just thinking that this is something that I'll do when I go to a brewery.
Right. So it's something that wine people do a lot, and it makes you look really pretentious. So probably don't do it while you're at the tap room unless you're in that kind of mood.
We'll do that on our next podcast.
Yeah.
I'll do that and I'll stick my pinky out.
Yeah, definitely have to do that. Then to get the really deep notes in there, a good way is to do the cover and swirl. So you put your hand over the top of your glass, you're going to swirl it. This is when you're tasting, you don't want to fill it up all the way to the top because I always get a wet hand when I do this. If I filled it up too high. You're going to swirl it, bring it up to your nose, then take your hand away, and then it will release the aromas up to your nose. See, now I'm getting some of that vegetal hop in this now.
Okay.
It's like a sweet cola. That's really good. And then, if you still want to get some more, a good way is kind of like a bloodhound. You're going to stick your nose in right in the glass and do lots of little short sniffs. And then you get something different again.
Yeah.
So you're going to get all those different layers of the aroma. Obviously, some of these you don't want to do while you're hanging out with your mates or while you're at the tap room, unless you're all doing it together because you're going to look really pretentious. But it's fun to do anyway.
Last night together, we can do anything together.
Yeah, we can do this together. Let's do
Right. Tori and I do this together. Oh, there's one technique. So then when we get into the tasting, so the wine tasters will sometimes spit the wine out.
Yeah.
We don't do that in beer because there's carbonation and things like that. All of that needs to go. Oh, also it's gross. And why are you wasting it? We're here to drink it, right?
Just drink it.
Just drink it. But there are different components in beer that we need to pick up by swallowing. So that carbonation needs to go across your tongue so you can taste it. And as well, we have what's known as orthonasal and retronasal. So orthonasal is what we've just done. It's what goes into your nose and you smell it straight away. Retronasal is when you swallow and the aroma particles come back up your nose. And so then that's what is establishing part of, well, so the aroma particles. So not the beer.
Gotcha.
The aroma particles are coming back up your nose.
Sorry, I just had to clarify.
That's the way the body works.
That's right. So that the aroma is coming up the other way up your nose, and that is then combining with the taste that you're getting on your tongue. So that aroma and that taste is combining to give you flavour. So taste, have you ever seen, the tongue maps that they show you when you're a kid where it's like salty is here and sweet is here? That's all nonsense. Like, you can get all of it all around your tongue. But that is your taste. Flavour is those sensations combined with the aroma. And that then tells your brain, this is strawberry, this is coffee, this is, your grandma's blueberry pie, which might be something that a beer evokes in you. Like, this is the amazing thing about beer, is that it doesn't just say, oh, it's strawberry. It says, that's grandma's strawberry pie from that really great family barbecue we had. Like, I love that it can give you these amazing memories that come back. So when you drink it, you're going to swallow, you're going to think about carbonation, you're going to think about the weight of the beer on your tongue. Like, is it thick? Is it thin? Is there a tartness coming from it? Is it sour? Is it sweet? Or is it dry? When you swallow, does it completely clean your mouth out and you want to go back for more? Because that's the best beers, because then you're going to drink lots of it. Like, there's so many different sensations. She says, taking a sip finally.
No, you're right. I mean, it's silly because as I've had this beer several times. I think it came in a 4-pack, and this is my final one. I'm drinking a Kentucky Bourbon Imperial Stout, and focusing on the way we taste it and thinking about the thickness and all the different things that you just said, it tastes much more drinkable. I guess I also have to say that my frozen glass is now at room temperature, and so is the beer is also warmer. So that also
you definitely don't want a frozen glass for an Imperial Stout, because you're going to lose so much complexity. There's going to be a range of malts that have been used to create that richness in the beer, and those layers you're going to lose if it's too cold.
I've also noticed, like, some stouts you keep in the fridge, keep them fresh, but when you get them out, you should let them sit for a second, because some flavors take a second to come back.
Definitely. And one of the things that I quite enjoy doing with a big stout, like, you do want to take your time over it. Usually they're quite high ABV, so it's a nice sipper rather than a chugger. And you can, like, over time, as you're drinking it, you'll notice that you'll start picking up more and more things from it as it warms and it releases all of those different volatiles in it.
Well, Joanne, I mean, I think we have not all of us, but the three of us have learned a significant amount about craft beer. And that was exactly what we were hoping we would get out of this conversation. I can't even tell you how excited I was when I got your email back that you were interested in our podcast. And I truly believe that helping women have more confidence in what they know about beer is a spectacular goal and achievement that you're doing right now. And so you can put all three of us on fans of Love Beer Learning. Thank you so much for joining our podcast.
You're welcome. We're gonna have to have you guys on our podcast, obviously, at some point.
We would love that. That'd be amazing.
We would love that.
I'm speaking for everyone here and saying, after talking to you, we're never going to drink beer the same way again.
No.
Yeah. No, for sure.
And that's a good,
and
in
you
a
know
good
what
way.
else? We're going to, whenever we get together in the same room now, we're always going to, with our pinkies out, do a drive-by and then the sniff and release.
Yes. That one, my friend Tori calls that one the trombone, because it looks like you're playing a trombone.
Raise the name for it.
I'm going to remember it. I'm going to remember it that
that's
way.
the official name, but that's what she's like. You're tromboning it. What are you getting from it? Although we've got to be careful how you say that.
And I think I've always wanted to go over to Britain, but you're United Kingdom, but you've definitely made me want to go over even more now and try all your wonderful beer out here.
Also, I think we're...
And Eric would love to see a Tottenham game, so...
Yes.
Oh, you Tottenham?
Yeah.
Guys, our rule was we're not talking about this because it's so rivalrous.
My husband is Manchester United, so...
Oh, that's fine.
That's
I mean,
fine.
tomorrow Tomorrow we got the game, so the match. But
All right. Well,
as long as
Joanne,
it's not
thank you
Arsenal.
so much for your time. We really appreciate
You're
it. And
welcome.
I apologize for going over our
No.
estimated time, but
I
with
do
any
this to
kind of
my guests all the
conversation, this
time.
interesting. So yeah, I mean,
True.
awesome.
It's karma for what I do to my own guests. So
You're all
Great.
good.
Well, okay,
Great.
awesome. Thank you.
thank you.